We live in interesting times for the headlines. New Zealand recovery teams are planning a risky mission to retrieve the remains from the still seething white volcano as pressure from distraught victims' families mounted. Indian police fired blanks on Thursday as thousands of protesters ignored a curfew in the northeast of the country in a fresh day of demonstrations against contentious new citizenship legislation. Russia said it was expelling 2 German diplomats in a tit-for-tat move after Berlin ejected 2 Russians over the killing of a former Chechen commander in a Berlin park. And the trial of President Trump will be the Senate's first priority in January if the U.S. leader is impeached as expected next week, according to the top Republican in Congress on Wednesday. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. First to New Zealand, Whakatane Mayor says there is a growing sense of desperation to bring home those who are still missing after the volcanic eruption on the White Island, New Zealand. The number of people believed to have died in Monday's disaster now stands at 16. The brother of a tour guide who died in the White Island volcano disaster said stalled efforts to recover the victims' bodies showed leadership had failed. New Zealand man Hayden Marshall Inman was among the first confirmed victims of Monday's eruption, with emotional accounts of his final moments on the island recalled by helicopter pilots who helped the survivors. Holding back tears, his brother Mark Inman told TVNZ that authorities were taking too long to recover bodies which he said could be picked up safely and securely by helicopter pilots like himself, who know the island inside and out. It's not frustration that they can't get to the island. It is more frustration that they haven't gone to the island, he said early on Thursday. There has been 2 perfect opportunities to get out there and they haven't gone. Red tape, bureaucracy, leadership has failed, he said. Inman wrote to New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern earlier this week asking for permission to enter the no-fly zone to collect his brother's body, a request he said was rejected. Prime Minister Ardern admitted authorities to do a better job of communicating retrieval efforts. Whakatane Mayor says now that there is indeed a growing sense of desperation to bring home those who are still missing after the eruption.
To make it clear that while we fully appreciate the need for the safety of any recovery team going onto Whakaari White Island to retrieve our loved ones, we are now living with a growing sense of desperation to bring home those that we know are there and those we love.
This is the most active that Whakaari White Island has been since 2016 and probably going back to quite a few years as well. So it is really a high level of unrest at this volcano.
There won't be a person in the room that has got more passion about going onto that island than police staff. We are all deeply passionate about getting onto the island to recover those bodies. I give that commitment to this community, to those whānau, whether they are in New Zealand or abroad. Of course I'm worried. I would be inhuman if I did not worry. So of course I'm going to worry tonight. And I hope that we will pray for those that are going to put themselves in harm's way tomorrow in the interests of doing the right thing and recovering those bodies for whānau. I have to emphasise that the risk has not gone. The risk remains present. And you heard the GNS expert Nico this morning talk about what that means in reality, what the mountain is doing, what the volcano is doing in terms of all of the indicators.
Now, New Zealand recovery teams are now planning a rescue mission to retrieve the remains from the still seething White Island volcano they said, as pressure from the distraught victims' families mounted. Despite volcanologists warning that the chances of another significant eruption in the next 24 hours had risen to 50 to 60%, police said they had approved a plan to move in on Friday.
We have a plan. The team has been working tirelessly throughout the day, as I promised they would, and at lunchtime today they presented me with options for consideration. We have spent considerable time making sure that we had the right people with the right skills and the right equipment here this evening so that we can move tomorrow. There is not a zero risk with regard to this plan. It does come with risk. And our job has been to very carefully consider the implications of that risk as we've gone about the planning process. There have been many conversations with many high-level leaders across the organisations, because at the end of the day, the buck stops at the top. So shortly after first light tomorrow, NZDF assets, people and capability will deploy to the island, assisted by specialist capabilities from across other agencies, including New Zealand Police. They will go onto the island and they will make every effort to recover all of the bodies from the island and return them to the Wellington.
The status of Whakaari White Island volcano remains highly volatile and uncertain. Our experts estimate the likelihood of an eruption has moved to 50 to 60% in the next 24 hours, up from 40 to 60% yesterday. There is an ongoing consistent trend in increasing tremor. So far, this has contributed to an increase in the likelihood of eruption estimates each day. Today is less safe than yesterday and the day before.
Now, with the help of drone flights and helicopter pilots who were on the island immediately after the eruption, authorities believe they know the location of some of the human remains. The number of people believed to have died in Monday's disaster now stands at 16. Poisonous gases are still billowing from the volcanic vent, and the island is blanketed in a thick layer of acidic ash. GeoNet volcanologist Nico Fernier said the dangers facing recovery teams if an eruption occurred included magma, superheated steam, ash, and cannonball-like rocks thrown from the caldera at supersonic speed. U.S. authorities held back Wednesday from characterizing a firefight that left 6 people, including 2 suspects, dead in a New York suburb as motivated by anti-Semitism, as the local mayor confirmed that the assailants targeted a kosher grocery there. Now, on Tuesday, 2 shooters, one of them female, stormed the deli in Jersey City. That's across the river from Lower Manhattan, killing 2 customers and a cashier before they died in a hail of police gunfire.
It's believed that at some point yesterday, 2 individuals encountered and killed Jersey City Police Detective Joseph Seals in the Bayview Cemetery in Jersey City. The 2 suspects are David N. Anderson, age 47, date of birth October 20th, 1972, and Francine Graham, age 50, date of birth April 28, 1969. At approximately 12:21 p.m., a white U-Haul van driven by Mr. Anderson parked directly across the street from the JC Kosher Supermarket, which is approximately 1 mile from the cemetery. Within seconds of arriving, Mr. Anderson exited the driver's side door of the U-Haul with a rifle in his hand. He walked towards the JC Kosher Supermarket and immediately began shooting. Miss Graham, the passenger in the van, followed Mr. Anderson into the store. From that point on until the conclusion of the event, the 2 suspects remained inside the store. Inside the supermarket, the suspects encountered 4 civilians. 3 of these civilians were killed, and 1 survived a gunshot wound.
The now deceased suspects, identified as David Anderson, 47, and Francine Graham, 50, who reportedly lived together, had earlier shot dead a police officer at a cemetery near the market. The state's Attorney General, Gerbir Gruwald, stopped short of calling the shooting anti-Semitic.
What we have said is that we are investigating the motivations for the killings, which, again, the facts are they arrived at a location, they got out and immediately began shooting. As to what precipitated that investigation, that hard work, the interviews, the review of documentary evidence, digital evidence, and other evidence is ongoing.
Hours earlier, Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop said that analysis of surveillance footage showed a targeted murder. State Governor Phil Murphy said that there was no ongoing security concern, but did say he had spoken with the Consul General of Israel in New York.
An attack on our Jewish community, or for that matter on any community in what is, by many measures, the most diverse state in the United States of America. And whether that attack may be here in Jersey City or anywhere in our state, that attack is an attack against all 9 million of us who are proud to call ourselves New Jerseyans, period.
Investigators discovered a live pipe bomb in the shooter's van, according to officials, along with other items they declined to discuss. According to the New York Times, citing a law enforcement official, investigators had also found a manifesto-style note that did not suggest a clear motive. 2 members of the area's Hasidic community were killed inside the market, the store owner's wife and a customer, according to Attorney General Gruwald. A store worker also died in the shootout. One other person in the store was wounded by a gunshot. When the assailants entered the deli, more than 50 children aged 5 to 12 were in an adjoining synagogue, according to Yossi Steinmetz, who ran inside the place of worship when shots rang out. New York is home to the largest Jewish community outside of Israel. Attacks against Jewish targets have been on the rise across the U.S., especially in the densely populated New York metropolitan area. A report in April from the Anti-Defamation League, or ADL, stated that the number of anti-Semitic attacks in 2018 was close to the record of 2017 with 1,879 incidents. Last year, a white supremacist walked into a Pittsburgh synagogue and killed 11 people, the deadliest attack ever committed against the Jewish community in the United States. And staying in the U.S., the trial of President Trump will be the Senate's first priority in January if the U.S. leader is impeached as expected next week, according to a top Republican in Congress on Wednesday. A Senate trial will have to be our first item of business in January, according to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He told his colleagues on the floor. Now, Democrats had warned that U.S. President Donald Trump was on the verge of dictatorship, while Republicans fiercely defended his record at the opening of a stormy, historic debate on impeachment charges on Wednesday. President Trump is allegedly to have wielded the power of his presidency for personal and political gain by pressuring Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 U.S. election. There's little question about the outcome in the House Judiciary Committee, but by the end of the week, the majority Democrat panel is expected to approve the charges and send them to the entire House of Representatives for passage next week. But lawmakers in the televised hearing appeared focused on speaking to voters whose sentiment will be crucial if, as expected, President Trump goes on trial in the U.S. Senate in January. In a grave voice, Democratic Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler opened the hearing.
This isn't much about. Taken together, the 2 articles charge President Trump with placing his private political interests above our national security, above our free and fair elections, and above our ability to hold public officials accountable. President Trump should have focused on America's national security and on the interests of the American people on that call. Instead, he completely ignored them in order to push his own personal political interests.
Doug Collins, the senior Republican on the committee, argued that Democrats have been seeking to impeach President Trump ever since he came into office in January of 2017 and have no clear case beyond abuse of power.
Because the Democrats can't come up with the argument for it. They don't have the who knew it and when they knew it. All they have is, well, here, members, we're going to give you abuse of power. You go home, pick something you don't like about the president. There's your abuse of power. This is as much about political expediency as it is anything else, and that should never be in articles of impeachment.
Conviction appears unlikely given that Republicans hold a majority in the chamber and the threshold for conviction is high at 2/3 of members. President Trump has reportedly told advisors he wants to make a dramatic show of the trial and that calling witnesses to appear in person in the Senate could help him damage Democrats ahead of the November election. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told reporters that no decision on whether to hear from witnesses live rather than in taped depositions would be made until after the trial's opening arguments. Senator Lindsey Graham said abuse of power is by House Democrats after 2 impeachment charges are announced against President Donald Trump. House Representative Kevin McCarthy described the actions by the Democrats as not a day that America will be proud about. Take a look.
The abuse of power is by House Democrats, not the President of the United States. They've abused their power to investigate. They created behind closed doors hearings in the Intel Committee. They denied the President's counsel the right to participate. They denied Republicans the right to call witnesses regarding all things Ukraine. I think the whole thing is a sham. I think it denies the president basic due process. I think it's a threat to the presidency itself. You couldn't get a parking ticket under the procedures they're using, and almost all of it's hearsay. So the abuse of power to me is by the Democrats, not by President Trump.
Just last week at this podium, Nancy Pelosi went to point out that they created a timeline to impeach President Trump that she said started 2.5 years ago. With the idea, just because you created a timeline to impeach a president that you disliked, you ignored facts. We would never be here if they paid attention to the facts or the hearings. This is not a day that America will be proud about. You've got to understand what impeachment means. Impeachment is the removal of the highest elected person in this land. I don't care if you think Americans who support President Trump are deplorables, but you do not have the right to disqualify their vote just because you do not like President Trump. He showed the art of the deal to how to make it happen. It was probably some of the finest negotiations I've seen by this president. And it just shows if he did not have to spend all this time being investigated, how much greater this country will be and how much greater potential we will have.
In other news, Russia said it was expelling 2 German diplomats in a tit-for-tat move after Berlin ejected 2 Russians over the killing of a former Chechen commander in a Berlin park. Germany immediately protested the move, warning that Berlin could take further action in the escalating row. As a retaliatory measure, the Russian side has decided to declare 2 employees of the German embassy in Russia persona non grata. The Russian Foreign Ministry said in a statement giving them 7 days to leave. The ministry made the announcement after summoning German Ambassador Gesa Andreas von Geer and issuing a formal diplomatic protest over the groundless expulsion of Russia's Berlin-based diplomats. Germany expelled the Russians last week after prosecutors said Moscow could be behind the murder of Zelimkhan Kangoshvili, a 40-year-old Georgian national. 40-year-old Zelimkhan Kangoshvili had reportedly worked for both Ukrainian and Russian interests after the Second Chechen War, which lasted from 1999 to 2009. German federal prosecutors have said that there was sufficient evidence to indicate that the man's murder may have been carried on Moscow's behalf, something the Kremlin has vehemently denied. In other news, Indian police fired blanks on Thursday as thousands of protesters ignored a curfew in the northeast of the country in a fresh day of demonstrations against contentious new citizenship legislation.
We have more than 100 tribes all over Northeast, and now the government, what are they doing? They're trying to make us minority in our own very state, in our own very religion, by giving citizenship to Bangladeshis. No doubt we'll protest like anything, because it's against our indigenous tribe. Our MPs, through you, I want to ask to our MPs, what are they doing?
So what this government they trying to do, they trying to do on the basis of religion. They are trying to give the illegal migrants, the Hindu, Bengali illegal migrants from the Bangladesh. They are trying to give citizenship, which will give a deep impact into the demographic and the cultural identity of our people in Assam and the entire Northeast.
Officials said 20 to 30 people have been hurt in the protests in recent days, with vehicles torched and police firing tear gas and charging the crowds with heavy wooden sticks. 5,000 paramilitary forces were deployed in the city of Guwahati in Assam state, while many roads and highways were blocked to prevent the spread of protests. All train services to Tripura and Assam were suspended and some flights were cancelled. Several cricket and football matches scheduled to take place in Assam were cancelled amid the curfew. Prime Minister Narendra Modi sought to calm the situation in a series of tweets that many in the region could not read because mobile internet was blocked in some areas. The Citizenship Amendment Bill passed by the Upper House on Wednesday allows for the fast tracking of citizenship applications from religious minorities from 3 neighboring countries, but not Muslims.
In this bill, they are targeting a community without naming it. It violates the basic structure of the Constitution. It is divisive and exclusive. It will destabilize our polity, and 18 to 20 million people will not trust us. It weakens the foundation of our culture, of our beliefs, of our ethos. It has consequences that you can't even imagine. And this is part of your political strategy. The last thing I want to say, sir, is this, that this is legally tenable and legally reprehensible, morally reprehensible. Those who have no idea of India cannot protect the idea of India. Don't convert this Indian Republic into a Jurassic Republic where there are 2 dinosaurs.
In other news, a provincial government leader said rescuers have found human remains during the search for a Chilean Air Force plane that went missing en route to Antarctica with 38 people aboard. Now, search teams are combing waters off the southern tip of South America for any sign of the C-130 Hercules transport aircraft, which disappeared late Monday. Chile's military have yet to publicly announce the discovery, but said earlier that search and rescue teams had already recovered floating debris and personal items suspected to come from the plane. Jose Fernandez, the governor of sparsely populated Magallanes region in Chile's far south, said the Air Force had confirmed the find to him. Most of those on the missing plane are Air Force personnel, but also aboard were 3 people from the Army, 2 from a private construction company, and an official from a Chilean university. Many of them were traveling to carry out logistical support tasks at the base, Chile's largest in the Antarctic. A small submarine with 4 crew members that was captured on Saturday by a Peruvian Navy patrol was transporting more than 1 ton of cocaine to Mexico. That is according to Peru Prosecutor's Office. Take a look. Back to the U.S., Harvey Weinstein leaves a New York City court where a judge increased his bail to $5 million after repeated violations of his ankle monitor system. Weinstein, who faces charges of rape and forcibly performing oral sex on a woman, was originally out on $1 million bail and has had his passport confiscated ahead of his January 6 trial. Take a look.
Mr. Weinstein is looking forward to January 6th, as he has from the very beginning. And I would like to remind everyone that Mr. Weinstein has a right to a fair trial. He is believed to be innocent until proven guilty under the laws of this great country.
Now, disgraced Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein has reached a $25 million settlement with dozens of women who accused him of sexual misconduct. One of the women's lawyers told AFP on Wednesday. Take a look. The once powerful producer of Pulp Fiction and Sin City, whose case sparked the hashtag #MeToo movement against sex crimes, faces a criminal trial next month that could see him jailed for life. The payout from a separate civil case will be shared among more than 30 actresses and former employees who have sued the 67-year-old for offenses ranging from sexual harassment to rape. Weinstein will not have to admit wrongdoing or pay from his own pocket. Celebrity news portal TMZ said, with the bill instead being met by insurers for his bankrupt former movie studio, the Weinstein Company. Now the deal will have to be signed by all parties and get court approval to resolve almost every misconduct lawsuit brought against him since 2017 and insulate company directors from future liability. Weinstein's accusers include some of the world's most famous actresses, including Angelina Jolie, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Salma Hayek, although none is part of the proceedings. Boardwalk Empire actress Paz de la Huerta, who accused the producer of raping her in 2010, is expected to be part of the settlement, according to her lawyer, Aaron Filler. The criminal claims against him involve just two accusers, meaning the civil settlement represents only the only chance of justice for the many women who have accused Weinstein of abuse. Four UN agencies said that 3 million undernourished people a month across the Asia-Pacific region must be lifted out of hunger until the end of 2030 if the Sustainable Development Goals are to be reached. The Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, UN Children's Fund, or UNICEF, the World Food Program, and World Health Organization are calling for urgent action to put nutrition at the heart of the social protection programs throughout the region. A new joint report highlighted that an estimated 77 million children under 5 were stunted last year and 32.5 million suffered from wasting. The latest figures make for grim reading on top of rising numbers of children and adults who are overweight or obese across the region. While social protection can potentially help to eradicate hunger and malnutrition, the report notes the need for more research into how they are impacting the poor, especially women and children, people with disabilities, and indigenous people. The UN agencies hope these findings will inform dialogues in member countries to improve food security and nutrition across Asia and the Pacific. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net 25.
Global trade has been backsliding this year. UN economists said on Tuesday, estimating that it's set to end the year 2.4% down with an overall value of $19 trillion. This poor performance comes on the back of significant growth in 2017 and 2018, according to UNCTAD, the UN's Trade and Development Agency in Geneva. In its 2019 Handbook of Statistics, it said that global economic output will only grow by 2.3% this year, 0.7 percentage points less than last year. And it believes that the services sector will increase by only 2.7% to $6 trillion, which is a significant slowdown compared with the last 2 years. Among the reasons for the falling value of trade, UNCTAD cites the high price of fuel in 2018, which has not continued into 2019. Maritime transport has also lost momentum, with volumes rising by only 2.7% last year, compared with 4.7% in 2017. The appellate branch of the WTO's dispute settlement body, sometimes called the Supreme Court of World Trade, will stop functioning on Wednesday after years of relentless U.S. opposition. The head of the World Trade Organization said that he intends to put new issues on the table in negotiations to save the body's appeals court, which shuts down at midnight. The appellate branch of the WTO's dispute settlement body, sometimes called the Supreme Court of World Trade, will stop functioning after years of relentless U.S. opposition. Washington, which accuses the court of serious overreach, has blocked the appointment of new judges, leaving it without the quorum of 3 needed to hear cases due to mandatory retirements. Months of talks to break the deadlock that has pitted the U.S. against the WTO's 163 other members have been led by New Zealand's Ambassador David Walker. WTO Director General Roberto Azevedo reaffirmed that the Walker process had failed, saying as of tomorrow, the appellate body will no longer be able to review new dispute rulings.
You will have heard that members could not achieve consensus on a draft decision to reform the appellate body that was submitted by the facilitator David Walker, Ambassador Walker. As of tomorrow, the appellate body will no longer be able to review new dispute rulings. And in this context, I think it's important to emphasize that WTO rules will remain in force, and members, for the most part, will continue to apply the WTO rulebook out of economic self-interest, commitment to legal principle, and, of course, the desire to preserve sound relations with their trading partners. The appellate body situation does not mean the end of rules-based dispute settlement at the WTO. Members will continue to resolve WTO disputes through consultations, panels, and they will also use other mechanisms envisaged in the WTO agreements to resolve disputes and review rulings, such as arbitration or good offices of the DG. I am myself starting intensive consultations with members to determine what more we need to put on the table in our search for a permanent solution on second step review. And my consultations will start right away. We stimulate and urge members to try to find negotiated and mutually acceptable solutions before introducing any kind of trade restrictive measures, because that simply compromises the environment of the global economy. There is no doubt in anybody's mind that the dispute settlement system has been compromised, and that we now live in a moment of uncertainty with regard to disputes that are ongoing. Now, having said that, like I pointed out before, it doesn't mean that there are no alternatives. There are many uncertainties. It doesn't mean that there are no alternatives. There are many uncertainties.
Energy giant Saudi Aramco's market value soared above $2 trillion on Thursday as its share price surged again on its second day of trading. The valuation milestone was sought by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman when he first floated the idea of selling up to 5% of Aramco, the world's largest oil firm, about 4 years ago. Aramco shares jumped another 9.7% to 38.60 riyals or $10.30 on Thursday morning, following a 10% rise the previous day. Now that boosted the company's valuation to $2.06 trillion and pushed the Saudi stock exchange's capitalization up $2.56 trillion, making it the seventh largest bourse in the world, ahead of the Canadian, German, and Indian markets. Since its trading debut on Wednesday, Aramco's share price has already soared 20.6% from the 32 riyals or $8.53 that the stock was sold for in the record-breaking initial public offering or IPO. Aramco's stock sale is the cornerstone of Prince Mohammed's ambitious strategy to overhaul the oil-reliant economy by raising funds to pour into mega projects and non-energy industries such as tourism and entertainment. To lure investors to subscribe to its IPO, Aramco guaranteed that it will distribute dividends of at least $75 billion a year until 2024. Nissan's new boss said Thursday a top priority was to restore trust after the scandal over former chief Carlos Ghosn roiled the Japanese car maker and its uneasy three-way alliance with Renault and Mitsubishi. In his first foreign media interview since taking office on December 1, Makoto Uchida said he wanted everything laid bare without hiding as he seeks to regain credibility and sales for the once mighty auto giant.
This difficulty of the past may sometimes make the people insecure in terms of what they are doing. So it is my job to go back to the basic. That's why I say three words. My importance word is that how we can respect each other, to understand each other, and how we can be transparent. So transparently put any problem or issue on the table without making some hiding, to show everything. Once we started to do this, definitely the trust would come. So this is something that the basic, our mindset we had in Nissan, in Alliance, which I want to restore that or remind the people so that we can move more professionally and to have that one team kind of the mindset in order for us to keep on be competitive in the market or further to be better in the market. So this is something I have to do as a CEO, become the CEO of this company. This is one of my first priorities.
The 53-year-old, who was previously in charge of Nissan activities in China as well as Alliance Group purchasing, has taken the reins at one of the most difficult moments in the company's long history. The new CEO has a mountain to climb to restore Nissan to health in an industry in turmoil undergoing a once-in-a-generation restructuring. The firm was last month forced to slash its full-year forecast for both sales and profits, admitting it had been hit by weak demand in Japan, the US, and Europe. Now, this came as Nissan reported its worst first-half results since the global financial crisis a decade ago. Mr. Uchida declined to be drawn on the issue of Brexit, stressing that the company was preparing for what external things may come in the future.
Brexit, of course, definitely, this is something that we have to anticipate again. We don't know what will be the conclusion today. So by knowing that, how we can make ourselves to be anticipated or ready to think about those, and definitely we are now under the discussion or planning how further we can make our Europe operation to be better. It's again how we can make ourselves to be ready when those uncertainty would come in the future is most important. So we are making ourselves to be ready, what we can do by ourselves, and preparing for what external thing may come in the future. So those are the areas that we have to be careful as internal. But again, I really would like to reinforce to say, we want to make this steady growth on every market that we are now operating. And that is our goal. Then that is what we have to focus today. So this is something
Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey is funding research aimed at changing the way information circulates on social media, with the goal of combating online violence, hate, and disinformation. Mr. Dorsey on Tuesday announced he would find an independent team of 5 architects, engineers, and designers, dubbed Blue Sky, to develop an open and decentralized standard for social media. In a series of posts, he explained the goal is for Twitter to ultimately be subject to this new standard, which would be open to adoption by fellow social media networks like Facebook or TikTok. He argues a single technical standard shared across different platforms, which currently operate like walled gardens, could be a game changer. Mr. Dorsey argued that the value of social media was increasingly shifting away from content hosting and removal and towards recommendation algorithms. This isn't going to happen overnight, Dorsey conceded. He said it will take many years to develop a sound, scalable, and usable decentralized standard for social media that paves the path to solving the challenges listed above. Our commitment is to fund this work to that point and beyond. Eagle News will be right back.
Here at the Shoe Museum in Marikina in the Philippines, reminding you to watch Digital News every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. And I am 1 for 25.
Greta Thunberg, the Swedish teenager who became the voice of a generation facing the climate change emergency, is named Time Magazine's 2019 Person of the Year. Take a look.
Even though the intentions may be good, this is not leadership. This is not leading. This is misleading. Because most of these pledges do not include aviation, shipping, and imported and exported goods.
An EU summit was at risk of being relocated to a neighboring building on Thursday after Greenpeace activists scaled the planned venue with the intention of staying there as long as possible. Take a look. Early Thursday, 28 Greenpeace activists scaled the facade of the EU's Europa building, where the heads of state and government will meet later in the day to discuss climate measures. The team deployed a large banner saying climate emergency and remain gripped to the building. They also held flares. Now, Brussels authorities deployed fire ladders to the Europa building to dislodge the activists as a federal police helicopter flew overhead. Greenpeace spokeswoman Laura Ullman said the plan was to keep the team on the summit venue as long as possible. European Union leaders will later Thursday try to bridge deep divide among member states over how to fund the fight against climate change. And scientists said they've come up with an environmentally friendly method that uses artificial sunlight to transform plastic into power-generating chemicals as countries worldwide battle to reduce waste. Huge quantities of plastic have piled up on land and been dumped into the sea across the world, with Asian nations in particular facing criticism for failing to tackle the problem. Now, researchers in Singapore say they have converted plastic into formic acid, which can be used in power plants to generate electricity by using a catalyst which neither damages the environment nor costs a lot of money. In lab experiments, researchers from the city's Nanyang Technological University mixed plastic with chemicals to form a solution which could then be broken down by artificial sunlight. The plastic was broken down in 6 days, and now scientists hope the process can be carried out in future under real sunlight.
So we are able to turn plastics, which are of course polluting the oceans, into useful chemicals, and we do it using sunlight. So we're hoping to turn this into a fully renewable process that's carbon neutral. So we actually have several challenges. One of them is to scale up the process, and also we need more manpower and funding to actually try to develop the process. So we have a few ideas, but it involves collaborations with engineers in the future, and then we want to turn this eventually into, let's say, a system that we can put into a pilot plant that we can put on, like Pulau Semangat, for example. So one of the challenges is that right now our catalyst is dissolved together with the plastic as well as the solvent. So the issue is that then in order for us to recover the catalyst, we actually have to put in energy to remove the solvent. So we want to actually develop a system that we can just separate from the products and the starting materials without actually putting more energy into it. I'll show you in the video. So our idea is that if we can put our system, embed the catalyst on the bit of a pond, for example in a water treatment or waste treatment plant, then we can potentially just leave the system in the sunlight for a few days, suspend the plastics in the water, flow it over that bit, and then at the end of the few days, then we can collect the products out.
The International Film Festival Manhattan Awards recognizes films with, quote, with a buzz and a heart. EBC film Guerrero is one of them. Here's Eagle News correspondent Joanne Blanco Soriano for the report.
I'm at the Philippine Center in New York for an exciting night of independent films. The International Film Festival Manhattan, now in its 9th year, and will have 5 days of screenings. The event opened with a reception for guests to have a chance to mingle and, of course, photo ops.
What brought me tonight is I've been actually blessed on going back and forth and seeing the talent of our Filipino filmmakers and co-actors. I am in support to my brother co-actor Leon Miguel.
Tonight is just a very special evening for me, and I'm just so grateful. It's about everyday challenges that I face in my life, and I'm hoping that my story will allow someone else to be open and honest with who they really are.
As we celebrate the Filipino-American History Month and the 100th year of Philippine cinema, IFFM proudly presents to you artfully crafted films which celebrate our rich history and friendship. Hence, I declare the International Film Festival Manhattan open.
Well, I traveled all the way from Germany and I entered with 2 films, and I'm nominated twice for Best Promo and for the Best Music Video. But I brought my mom. I decided to thank her for always believing in me. After New York, I go home and I want to go to all the big cities in Germany and do open screenings.
Louis Pedron spoke to EBC about how the film festival got started.
As I grew with my filmmaking career in acting and stuff, I go like, what if I also feature other people besides trying to get into that industry? So thus, creating a film festival happened. I've been asked a lot. In the International Film Festival Manhattan, it says international, but they ask me, why do you put a lot of Filipino films? And my answer is, why not? They create beautiful films, and a lot of them have got into different film festivals.
It is very important to support fellow filmmakers and fellow actors because it shows Philippines, most especially, that we are united, that we are in support of all Filipino talent, and to also be recognized by foreign. Here we are in the United States, for them to actually see and recognize the Filipino talent in show business and in acting and filmmaking.
With so many different films worthy of receiving recognition, what criteria were used in selecting films for this film festival?
Usually it's something from the heart, like what touches me or what I hear about. If it has like a buzz, Rainbow Sunset was the biggest award winner at the Metro Manila Film Festival last year. Guerrero, of course, has a buzz all over the Philippines, and when I've seen it, it has the heart. It's Rocky-like. Boxing and sports is really, really important ingrained in our hearts as Filipinos and here in America because of Manny Pacquiao.
It was such an exciting night to be amongst such creative filmmakers and actors, and it was such an honor to be here on behalf of EBC Films to accept the award for Best Screenplay. So such an honor, and I'm so excited for part 2, which is going to be coming out pretty soon. So stay tuned for that.
What a great night to celebrate with all of the awardees and honorees. Reporting from New York at the Philippine Center, this is Joanne Soriano for Eagle News 1 with 25.
And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, I'm Alma Angeles. Always 1 with 25. Good night.